Thanks, Andy. Next we will get Sheila. Sheila to give her sharing.
Hi everyone, my name is Sheila. So I thought before I started, I'll give a really quick intro about myself. I work as a data scientist in the government, and I'm actually really deep into this LLM space. This year I built 5 LLM products, and so I will try to share and weave in a bit more about maybe a bit more personal knowledge in this space. I will start with data set as well. And I did not use Party Route at all. So I gave it one go, and the responses were so short, yet the metrics we were scored on were accuracy and comprehensiveness. So I got such short responses. I believe it was either 100 characters or 100 words wouldn't really cut it. And I personally prefer higher hand-on customizability. So I decided I would create the whole data set myself. So how, right? So I have OpenAI APIs. I wanted to first hit with the best model. So you might have heard OpenAI last month came out with O1 Preview. And the difference in O1 Preview to its previous suite of 3.5, 4, and 4.0 models were that O1 Preview does internal thinking. So it'll think through and then it'll respond to you. That's why it's the best reasoning model. So I started with O1 Preview, and so first of all, models. I dropped O1 Preview because it was very, very expensive. Not sure if you know, it's like twice or thrice as expensive as the old models. So instead, I decided to go with the second best OpenAI model. It's called 4.0, 4 Omni. But 4.0, as I just said, lacks in the reasoning thinking tokens that O1 Preview does. So it doesn't do as well for thinking, and coming up with the best answer. So instead I used prompt engineering. And last year, GovTech organized an LLM prompt engineering competition, which I won. So I picked up a lot of skills and techniques from there that I used here to prompt engineer 4.0 to become more like O1, so I can get O1's results with 4.0's level of cheapness. I'll talk a bit more about that. It's called chain of thought. What that means is you tell the model in your prompt to 4.0 that first I want you to think through this task I'm giving you and output your thinking tokens first, and only after that, at the very end, give me your actual response to this task. Why that helps is LLMs, the way they work, they output token by token. You can think of tokens as words. So they output, I guess, word by word, and every preceding word they output impacts every subsequent word they output because they work based on probability. So let's say the first token they output is I love ice, first 3. Then those 3 first tokens would push the 4th token they output to be cream with the highest probability, compared to like dog or cat or whatever. So that's how chain of thought, this prompt engineering technique works. You ask it to first output its thinking, and the goal is these thinking tokens will impact its final response tokens to be of the highest accuracy, the highest comprehensiveness, the best answer. So that was what went into my prompt. Okay, let me take a step back and detail exactly how I got the data set before I just talked about all the prompts. First, I asked it to give me 20 topics about Singapore because the topic was so broad. It was anything and everything to do with Singapore. And like Andy mentioned on Discord, people were asking, what does that mean? So I decided I'm not going to be the one delineating the exact topics. I'm going to ask the LLM to give me the best 20 most pertinent topics about Singapore. And those were my first stage. I had 20 topics. So that was one prompt, asking it to give me the 20 topics. Now I had a next prompt that says, you are given a topic, and given this topic, give me how many questions? 50 questions on this topic. But I included the whole chain of thought prompt engineering, so I wanted it to think first and then give me your best 50 questions that really encapsulate this topic. So now from 20 topics, I have 50 questions per topic. So I had a data set of 1,000 questions. Now I need answers. And so I had a third prompt that went into 4.0 that told it, you are given a question, and from this question, do chain of thought first to think through how to get the best answer, and then give me your best answer for this question. And like Andy, I asked it to make it long because one of the metrics was comprehensiveness. So I asked for a long answer. I asked for detailed examples on Singapore. So instead of saying like, Singapore has the best hawker culture, give me examples. So maybe a Bedok 85 hawker, examples, essentially. And also, I asked for the answer in Markdown. So Markdown is another prompt engineering technique where it was popularized, I think, first by OpenAI, because people like to try and jailbreak OpenAI system prompts. And people successfully did that, and it was spread online that their system prompts were written in Markdown. So Markdown is a format where typically you can write websites and stuff. Not the expert on that, but it is a specific format with specific syntax to structure plain text with headings and section breaks and subheadings, all of that. So because such famous LLMs had their system prompts written in Markdown, slowly Markdown became the go-to way of structuring plain text going into prompts, yes. And then so I asked for answers in Markdown so that I could have very good structure and very good clarity in my answers. And in the finale day, I also asked for my answers in Markdown. Not sure if you guys went for the event, but you would have seen maybe that Andy and my answers were the ones that were written in Markdown. You would see like section heading, and then we will answer. And then you have like a paragraph heading, and then the paragraph, another paragraph heading, and then the paragraph. That's because I asked for it on the finale day, but also in my fine-tuning data set, all my answers were in Markdown. Very fast. What else? Okay, so now I had a data set, and it had 1,000 question-answer pairs. The next is hyperparameter tuning. So I am pretty new to fine-tuning, the only experience I had with fine-tuning was hitting OpenAI's fine-tuning API. So they have a fine-tuning API. But the best part about that is that they abstract everything for you. You literally call the API with your data set, and they give you the parameters that they deem to be optimal based on your data set. So if you upload a different fine-tuning data set, they'll give you different hyperparameters, and they take care of it on their side. So I was blessed to always have been working with that, and now on Jumpstart, I had to input my own hyperparameters. So, pro tip, Andy read a lot of research papers, which is amazing. I didn't have time, so I would literally go on ChatGPT and tell it everything about my data set. So I would have details on how many Q&A pairs, how long my A answer pair was, that it was in Markdown, and then the goal I was trying to achieve, have a fine-tuned model that has the highest accuracy in terms of, the highest performance in terms of accuracy and comprehensiveness. Basically give it all the details, and then ask it, based on this, I have this list of hyperparameters I need to set to fine-tune this model, set it for me, and tell me why. Because I was trying to learn at the same time. And then it told me, and then I used it. It was 8 epochs, and it was learning rate of 0.00003, and it asked me to increase my LoRa dropout as well to 10%. So basically, I set all of these. I ran. Okay. One thing I learned though is your hyperparameters depend a lot on your training data set. So if instead of 1,000, I had 100,000, then I wouldn't be using 8 epochs. I might be using a lot less. And that's why I wanted to feed my dataset details into ChatGPT and ask it, based on this, what should my hyperparameters be? I believe in traditional deep learning and machine learning, your hyperparameters also depend largely on your data set. That's why you do hyperparameter tuning based on the data set as well. So I wouldn't give that too much of thought, because my method of just asking ChatGPT, this is my data set, this is the details, what's the optimal hyperparameters, worked out pretty well. So that was it on hyperparameters. I wrote down notes. Hold on. Think if there's anything else I want to say. Oh, okay. So before, when I was curating my own data set, and I had like 3 prompts: get topics, get questions, get answers. I specifically told it to create different types of questions, because I couldn't preempt in the 49 leaderboard questions or the 7 finale questions what kind of questions that would be. So I asked it to give, say, specific questions that require one precise, non-subjective answer, and also broad questions that are general and open-ended, and you can have differing views. And then, let's see. Yeah, so that to vary the types of questions. And I actually never encountered what Andy mentioned about when he asked ChatGPT to give him answers to 10 questions, then the answers were too short because it was producing it all in one response, because I would give only one question per API call. So you can think of an API call as you being on the ChatGPT website and saying, what is the key ingredient in satay? One question per hitting enter on the website, one question per API call to OpenAI. So that meant I made 1,000 API calls to OpenAI. But in the world of prompt engineering and making LLM products, it's always good to keep your tasks as separate as possible. If you have 10 questions, then send 10 different API calls, 10 different requests to the model, so that in each of its responses, it can be very focused on only that question, only that task. Yes. Let's see. So that was get questions just now, where I said one thing I used was asking it to give me different types of questions. Then in my get answers prompt, I also told it stuff like, if you get open and if the question is open-ended, then I want you to provide me a long, nuanced, and balanced analysis. Then I give examples. For example, you can provide both positive and negative views, or maybe short-term and long-term views, and use your best judgment to decide what kind of nuanced analysis would be best for this specific question. Yeah. Let me think. Then on finale day, so the context is we can write our own prompt, but we can also change the hyperparameters. And we were allowed to change temperature, top P, and the length of the response. As Andy very astutely pointed out, I also believe the LLM judge would prefer longer responses. So I set my response length to max. And then I initially started with temperature at 1. If you're unfamiliar, temperature is a hyperparameter that controls the creativity of the LLM's response, and also the deterministicness. So let's say your question is, what should I eat on a hot day? If your temp is 1, maybe you ask it 10 times. 10 times it will tell you ice cream. But if your temp, what did I say? If your temp is 0, no creativity, then it will always give you ice cream. If your temp is 1, max creativity, then maybe sometimes it tells you ice cream, other times it tells you ice kacang and all those stuff. Different things all the time. So I started with temp at 0 because I thought some of the questions we were getting seemed like, how should I put this? Typically, I don't use temp equals to 1 unless it's creative work. And some of the initial questions we were getting didn't seem to me like I wanted the LLM to be way too crazy or out there or creative. So I started with temp at 0. That's typically the default go-to temp value. And I was getting scored very badly by the LLM judge for the first 2 rounds. And I was being like 5th case or 4th case or something. And I was thinking, live, what can I change? So I played around with the hyperparameters on the spot. Not the hyperparameters for fine-tuning, but the hyperparameters for getting the response from my fine-tuned model on the spot. And somehow, weirdly, I found out if I had my temp set at 1, the LLM judge loved it. So if you went to finals, you might have seen suddenly like task 3, task 4, I was ranked 1st in terms of the LLM judge. And I was like, why? I don't know. But that was me on the spot optimizing task by task. Yes, I think that's it for me. But I would love to take questions if you have later. Thank you.